Hello and welcome. My name is Mary Lou and you're listening to the Healer Hotspot podcast, which is all about well-being for women both at home and at work. We'll be talking to female entrepreneurs about their business journey and what inspires them, whilst also what living and working holistically looks like to them. To hear and be able to relate to other people's journeys can be a powerful reminder to us all of our own inner strength, resilience and abilities, whilst also inspiring us to better ourselves. In this series, we'll also be meeting some holistic practitioners and exploring their wonderful practices and how they can help us in our everyday lives. In this week's episode, I'm delighted to introduce someone who it's a privilege to call her a friend, Emma Lane Harvey. Emma is a Reiki Master and Crystal Healer, and she also runs regular meditation groups in Kingsbridge. I've known Emma for many years and have always loved her positive, vibrant energy. You can't help but smile and feel happy when you spend time with her. During our chat, Emma explored her holistic and spiritual journey over the years and how cancer of the parotid gland 18 years ago was a huge turning point in her life. We touched on integrating alternative therapies into allopathic medicine and what that could look like, and also about educating and supporting the next generation to be more aware and connected both spiritually and holistically. We recorded this conversation remotely during the lockdown phase of the coronavirus outbreak. Unfortunately, there were moments where the connection was not great, so I've had to edit and splice some corrupted pieces of conversation together. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation with Emma and enjoy it as much as I did when doing it. Okay, so, gorgeous Emma, if you sat next to someone at a dinner party and they asked what you did, what would you tell them?
That's a really interesting one because I've been in that situation so many times. But I think I feel much more comfortable in my skin now about what I do. So I would basically say that I was a holistic therapist, and that would involve healing and Reiki and crystals.
And what kind of response does that get?
It depends on how far into the dinner party we are. If it's at the beginning when everybody's sort of, slightly sort of polite, then, oh, that's very nice. Oh, lovely. And then we might move on to other subjects. But often people are quite intrigued, and I love a good sort of skeptic, somebody says, what a load of old rubbish. And then I sort of tend to sort of move into...
It's interesting they're brave enough to actually say that, because I'll get kind of a blank look. That's really interesting, isn't it?
It's usually men. Women are much more polite, I think. But
it's like a challenge.
I quite like it. I do love a good debate anyway. But I think also what I do, and by me actually, saying that, I give it value because I do value it, and actually, and my belief is that, unless you experience something or unless you have knowledge about something, really, do you have the right to sort of be skeptic? You can ask questions, but some people, not necessarily rude, but you could just see in their whole demeanor, it's like, oh, got a nutter here, or what a load of rubbish, or I don't believe in anything other than what the doctor tells me, and that's fine. We're all different, but maybe just having those types of conversations might just open their viewpoint, maybe. And I just think, well, if it does, great, and if it doesn't, at least I've been true and honest about what I love and what I do.
And not having to apologise for it.
No, and I think I did for a long time.
Because when people are awkward, you want to make that okay for them, so you then start to apologise and move away from that. But actually, that's, as you said, it's okay to sit with that. Well, actually, I'm okay with doing this. If you're awkward, that's on you. That's not mine to hold.
Definitely. And I think I think things are, I mean, certainly in light of the situation that we're all finding ourselves in, you know, people are more aware of things like just anxiety and how that affects your body, and how out of balance you can become physically or emotionally. And the beauty of what I do and how I do it supports that. So, you know, definitely a listening ear, but also the power of the healing side of things is something you're not going to get maybe with a massage or acupuncture, you know, which are all fantastic, valid therapies in themselves. But this is different. So my thinking is, you know, just give it a whirl. And I say to my clients on the first time, I'd love to see you again, but honestly, do not worry if this isn't for you. Just keep searching for what's right for you. Keep looking, because there isn't just one, you know, one thing fits all. We know that in life, don't we?
And that's what I love about that. I love about all the disciplines is whatever your either emotional or physical or psychological issue is, there are so many different ways. I just see it as all slotting in. And it frustrates me and makes me sad that people tend to think that Western medicine, that allopathic medicine is the only way to deal with something.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so valid, especially now, so valid in so many ways. But actually, there are other ways of dealing with things, like anxiety, you know, or healing, and actually trusting that your body has the ability to heal without having to ingest pharma. I think that's huge for me.
I think that's, you know, that is such a powerful statement that, you know, the body does have the ability to heal, and how it does that can be reached in so many different forms.
Yeah.
You know, just even meditation, you know, what you get from meditation, you know, is powerful. You know, you look at, you know, people who use the Calm app and Headspace that would never in a million years walk through the door of a, you know, if you like, holistic or alternative space. But that's fine. As long as you're doing that, you're reaching a part of you, which, you know, I believe, you know, we should all be doing. We should be teaching our children. We should be voicing, definitely at dinner parties and amongst friends. And, you know, it will settle with some and some it won't. But let's keep talking.
Yeah, I get to the point for me where you just hope that your actions and your thoughts and your beliefs inspire others. And that's all you can do. Because you can't make anyone take it on board, can you?
No, and you know, with what you do, when you are passionate about something, when you have walked through something and felt the benefits and seen the benefits and experienced the benefits, you cannot argue with that. So you know, any skeptic who turns around and goes, well, da 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 da, you know, you say, well, actually, in my experience, absolutely worked. Because what have they got to go on? Genuinely, nothing. But you do. You've had an experience. Fear. Absolutely. Fear. Goodness me. What fear does.
What I found so interesting is having, as you know, adapted what I do and having been an entrepreneur and in retail and stuff, and having, I suppose for me, it's being brave enough to live my truth and to actually work with what I love and to have those conversations and be okay with what I believe. Is I've had enough people say to me, having had a conversation or treatment, this is so what you should be doing. This is exactly what you should be doing. And I think, oh my God, and that's just the most thrilling thing, that they can feel either my passion or my knowledge, or that I can sit with it. And actually I'm able to feed my training and my love of it to them. And I've never had that before. I've never had that said to me before.
But you know, that in itself, that's energy. So when people dispute, you know, something like Reiki or whatever, your energy, you know, when somebody feels your energy, you walk into a room and there's somebody that you think, oh goodness, no, you know, I don't know, you know, how I'm going to deal with this because I'm finding their energy quite difficult or challenging. But, you know, when you talk to people and because you love and you believe and you trust and you value exactly what you do, the same for me, who can argue with that? All they're going to do is feel it. And that's so powerful when you stand with somebody and they're excited about what they do. And, you know, that for me is testament. You know, I'd give that I'd give anything a go if somebody was that passionate. I just think, I'd like to, I want to experience that. And like I say, it might not be something I go back to. Maybe I will, I don't know. But I definitely want to be part of that passion that somebody else has.
So when did your holistic journey start for you?
Because quite a big slice of, if not all of what I do, is a very spiritual journey as well. So if I start there personally and how it led on, so I have always felt very, if you like, on basics, sort of, you know, looked after, protected, if you liked. And I lost my grandmother when I was very young, and I was very, very close to her. Very strong memories of her house, her dressing table, her curtains in her spare room, all different things. So when I lost her, it was huge, even though I was probably 4 or 5. And I always felt that she was with me, she was around me, I felt very safe. So certainly as I sort of, you know, journeyed along, you know, through teenage and, you know, different challenges and different times, I would talk to her. I would, if you like, pray in some ways, but it wasn't a matter of going to church or putting my hands together. It was about communicating, connecting, and I felt that. And I was always very drawn, certainly going into late teens and my early 20s, if there was a chance for me to experience like a tarot reading or something like that, or, you know, I was always intrigued and loved it, loved that side of things. Didn't really think that much about it. I just loved it when I experienced it. And then in 2002, I was diagnosed with cancer in my parotid gland. And at that stage, I had a 2-year-old son, and I was a single mum. And it was just a huge bolt out of the blue. It was an unexpected, I think, because I was, you know, if you like, I was 34, and I'm very aware that age, you know, cancer doesn't discriminate age whatsoever. To just be a visit with the doctor to check my scarring and my tissues, you know, my stitches. I had Luke with me, sat there on my lap, and my surgeon said, you know, Emma, I'm really sorry, but you have cancer in your parotid, you know, you have cancer in your parotid gland. We think we got as much as we could, if not all of it, but we can't be sure. It's a very delicate area. It's near your facial nerves, and had it have been left any longer, then things would have been very different. So you're going to need treatment. And I was like, hold on a minute, cancer, what? It was bizarre. And I know and understand now how that affects the body on such a shock level.
Yeah.
And
Power of prognosis.
Gosh, so, you know, literally, do you remember Mr. Ben? He would walk through the door. I described it like that for so long. You know, I walked through this door and my life changed completely. Yeah. So I started my treatment because it was in my parotid gland and going through my head and my neck, through my mouth. It left me with lots of burns and sores. So everything it touched, it just burned. So I was unable to eat. I couldn't speak to Luke because the movement of my cheeks, which had all the burns and the sores, just would rub against my teeth, and the pain was just extreme. And I was in quite a bad way on sort of the end of week 2 of my treatment. And I remember my sister taking me and speaking to the nurses, and, you know, and saying, you know, she's in loads and loads of pain, and I'm sure things have really advanced because medicine does so much, but it was literally take paracetamol and, you know, just keep gargling, you know, with cold water. And I mean, it was tricky. So during that time and around that time, and I can't remember exactly, things get really fuzzy when you're having cancer treatment as well. And my mum's school friend So I've known this lady all my life. Rang my mum and just said, look, you know, how's Em doing? My mum was like, not great. She's not eating. She's in loads and loads of pain. And she said, well, I've met this lady, and she's incredible. She's a healer. And, you know, do you think Emma would be up for it? So my mum, I think, said, Emma will try anything. But she's, you know, she's quite into that whole sort of healing spiritual thing. And so interestingly, and you know, I don't know how relevant it is, but for me at the time it was, I would go to Spiritualist Church. I wasn't able to go very often because obviously I was a single mum. So when I could get, you know, babysitting for Luke, I would go and sit at the back of this Spiritualist Church, not knowing quite what it involved. But I just know I just needed something. I was, you know, if you like, being guided, being shown. And so I found this tiny little shack, which was a Spiritualist church not far from where I was living. And every single time I was able to go, I would get a message from the person that was the medium and holding the church service at the very end of the church. And one of the times they had different people all the time, but this one particular chap, he was really lovely, but he said, I'm going to come to you, and obviously described me. And I said, oh, right. And he said, but I'm going to speak to you afterwards. So I think, you know, again, you know, looking at it afterwards, after the event, he obviously knew that I was unwell. I knew I was unwell, but he didn't know I was unwell and just about to start cancer treatment. And he said to me, how's your health? And I said, well, you know, I've been diagnosed. And he said, right, okay. He said, you need to find 3 crystals. If I'm honest with you, I can't even remember them now, but say it was a purple crystal, which now would be an amethyst, a yellow, which is citrine, and a green, which could be a malachite. But he said, you need to find that's going to really help you with your healing. So, sorry, going back to my mum's friend who gave my mum this number for this healer. We rang on her door. I was probably towards the end of week 3, and I was in so much pain. And I walked in, and I swear I'd met her before. There was such a link with this lady, this complete stranger. And there at the center of her chest it's made me all go cold, on a necklace was these 3 crystals. And I knew then I was going to be, and I knew then I was going to be fine. And she was a really glamorous lady, not, you know, when you say you're a healer, you know, you expect this sort of, I don't know, or the expectation can be the stereotypical, you know, slightly weird looking, you know, completely head to toe, maybe in tie dye, and you know, there's a lot of jangling going on with wind chimes or what. I don't know. I'm trying to create the stereotypical. Yvonne was this incredibly smart businesswoman, glamorous, immaculate hair and makeup, but her energy was incredible. And you know, I have said before, and I've even said to her, she saved my life. She saved my life on so many levels. She eradicated pain every single time I went. And I was, you know, as the treatment went further and further down the line, the pain got a lot worse because obviously the treatment was within my body and also creating more and more sores. And I would go, and she would lay me on the treatment couch, and you know, I didn't know what she was doing. You know, I would just drift away. But the visions, the pictures I got in my head as I was having healing was incredible. I'd never experienced that. I could feel warmth. I could feel change in my body. It was unbelievable. But what was the most incredible thing, that for any skeptic, would be that I was on morphine, I was on fentanyl, I was on so many different pills and painkillers and goodness knows what, and nothing touched it. And she would lay me down for an hour, sometimes more, it depended, but definitely an hour. And I couldn't speak to her, I couldn't tell her where it was hurting. And I would get up and my mum would be waiting for me. I would come out, and it was the only time that day that I had healing that I was able to speak to my mum or speak to Luke. And then the following day I'd go in, I'd have treatment, and I couldn't speak again because all the pain would come back. So, you know, for me, it changed everything. I mean, obviously the treatment was very harsh. I'm probably a generous size 14, I would imagine. I went down to a size 4, and it was, and even then, you know, I was wearing size 6 trousers, and they were on my hips. It was, I remember looking and thinking, whoa, I didn't look like me. It was such a journey, and you know what I will go on to say is, which, you know, for anybody who's listening who is going through this or knows somebody who's gone through this, survived or sadly not, I know that journey for me was a very powerful time in my life where if you like, I was being guided to a different path. I had a lovely life. I've got a beautiful family. I've got, you know, a wonderful son. You know, I'm very grateful for many, many things. But one of the biggest things I'm grateful for was that journey, was that horrible, torturous, scary, lonely time, because it led me to where I am today. So I can only but ever be grateful, you know, only ever be thankful. I don't want it again, thank you, but and I certainly wouldn't wish it on anybody. But it was a gift. You know, it was difficult afterwards. You know, Luke really struggled afterwards, you know, with separation. He was incredible when I was going through it, and as he saw me sort of recover, you know, it was a very difficult time for him. But I continued to see Yvonne, who is the lady that I saw. I learned a lot about myself spiritually, you know, going back over time, understanding, you know, things like, you know, my dad and my mum split up.
Tend to be brought up with relying on Western medicine, but when you step into this alternative world, and I hate that word in itself, but
yeah, no, I agree.
Really, because it shouldn't be alternative. It should just be part of a bigger offering. But it gives you a totally different armory. It gives you a totally different tools in your belt. I mean, as you know, my husband suffers from chronic pain, and I'm always saying to him, all of that is valid, but let's get more tools in your belt, because the current things aren't working for you. And so for you, hearing that story is all that gift of Yvonne and the healing and the crystals and that spirituality, and being able to be, by the sounds of it, really connected with who you are, to have a different viewpoint on relationships or your parents splitting up, or, you know, it's so valuable, I think, on so many levels.
I think it's a shame when it doesn't, and I have worked with lots of different people, different ages, men and women, children, over the years, and it always interests me that either people just want a quick fix. You can't. There is no quick fix when it comes to this particular journey, because. And, you know, a bit like alternative, I've probably used journey more than I would ever normally use it, because it is a journey. But again, you know, when somebody is slightly skeptical, they're, oh yeah, you know, everyone's on a journey, inverted commas. But it is, our life is a journey. We get on at one stop and we get off at another stop, and, you know, birth and death and everything in between is within our power, is a choice, and some of those choices are really, 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 really hard, and sometimes really painful. But if it's necessary for you to experience the joy, the happiness, the health, whether it be mentally or physically, that you deserve, then you've got a choice.
It's choosing how you respond. It's choosing how you view it and what you say. Or it could all be poor me, isn't it awful, I'm being punished. Or it could be, actually, what can I learn from this? How can I be a better person from this? What other modalities or therapies shall I try and find? And as you say before, there are so many. Sometimes, I mean, for me, it's energy medicine. It is crystals and homeopathy and healing and kinesiology. But for some people, they don't get that. There's no proof. Like a lot of, although there is for kinesiology. And it's such a leap for people, isn't it? They don't know that they can trust it.
And I think sometimes in illness, people can become angry. And I think, because I can remember saying to Yvonne, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible." And she sort of laughed and she said, "That's really interesting, Em." She said, "I had somebody in yesterday, not with the same cancer in the same place, but going through cancer, and they are so angry." And that doesn't make me a wonderful person. That was just my experience. That was my interpretation of my experience. But they're, and I always think of that person, and I think, I wonder how they have survived in, is it something they've just gone, right, that happened, it's done? Or, but it's such an interesting topic of how people experience things. So how people experience divorce, you could just be really bitter, really angry, and every relationship you ever then go on to have is going to be wrapped in that toxic blanket from a previous experience. And instead of, and I know it's difficult, but instead of saying that didn't work for that time, lots of people have split up. I did with Luke's dad. I'm very lucky. I do have a really good relationship with him. We can pick up the phone to each other. We're not on the phone every day, and I know the reasons why we're not together, and so does he, I'm sure. But we make the best of a situation, and I know lots of people are unable to do that, but I would hate for people, and I know it happens, that it just tarnishes every single relationship, because especially when, issues of the heart, loving and being loved, that is a great gift. There's nothing quite so powerful, I don't think. Loving self, loving your children, loving your partner, your friends, your family.
But it does come down, I think, it's quite bilateral, but love and fear. That anger comes from fear. And I do find, talking about the way the doctors, and obviously they had to do that treatment, and that's what you were needed in order to heal, but it's incredibly disempowering. You were in pain, and it's like, well, take a paracetamol. And actually going into Yvonne and I think probably that's possibly part of the healing, maybe not possibly, if I don't want to speak words for you, but for other people, it's about taking your power back. And then that, I think, changes your cells, literally, by being that positive. Actually, I'm in control. And that's not even being a control freak. It's about, it's not being done to me. I'm part of this journey. And what am I going to do about it?
I can make choice. And we, it goes back to choice again. I mean, like, I think I said, God forbid, I really don't want that journey again. Thank you, if I was given the choice. But at the same time, I know that, if I was given that, I would choose because of who I am today, not based on fear. It was such a shock, as I explained. Would I have treatment again? I don't honestly know. And that's, I would love to think that I would, seek every alternative going. And I'm pretty sure that is the route that I would go, but
Yeah.
none of us know. So what I always think is, just stay open, research, find out, experience, try something. You have nothing to lose, but be empowered.
Yeah, totally. And it's also, you use the word choice. I like to use the word taking responsibility as well, because you're giving your power away, and you want to. I don't think anything good can come from being disempowered, and it's taking responsibility. Is don't just let them do it. Either take responsibility in your choices or in your curiosity in going, I'm going to look at other things and look at diet or look at healing or look at crystals. Yeah. And a crystal is not going to cure your cancer. If you said that to someone, they would laugh at you. I have a strong belief in the power of healing, but it's going to help you feel better. It's going to put your cells in a better, stronger vibration in order that they can heal or better receive the medicine or better recover. So it's not, alternative modalities themselves can cure cancer, or I think on some level they probably can. Yeah. It's about getting your body in the best position in order to heal.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that, because part of Yvonne's healing, if you like, was crystals. That's what led me to do what I've done, like acupuncture, counselling. So lots of engaging with the narrative that set around the cancer and then beyond. It wasn't just the cancer that needed healing. I needed to heal other areas, and again, all I can say really is that was the gift. It sort of took me to a platform where I sort of was able to look back on the life that I had, and I had lots of fun, and I've got a very loving mum and a great sister, and some lovely family, and I had lots and lots of, but how I hadn't healed from things that had gone on. I hadn't processed, because I was a child. There were things that happened that as a child I wasn't mature enough. Certainly, I'm 51, and there wasn't what we have now. Our children have a lot more access now to, pastoral care within schools, counselling. If you'd mentioned that back in the day, if you took your child to counselling or to a therapist, there was obviously something very wrong with them. But actually, all that is actually giving that child a voice, giving that person a voice.
Yeah.
And if you can voice how, and you're working through that process. So in part of the healing that I do, and I studied for 2 years learning about crystals, but it isn't just about that. And I am a qualified Reiki Master, and it isn't just about that either. It's certainly what I offer is a very rounded view of helping, supporting anyone who walked through my door, in healing, involving both mentally, physically, past and taking them into a much healthier future.
I think it's about creating that positive vibration, whether using the crystals or the power of your thoughts. And I think we were saying earlier, the power that we have to heal ourselves, a lot of that does come from thought. If you're nurtured, if you're feeling better, that I think overrides everything. Whereas if you're disempowered and you're, I said earlier, the power of prognosis, it's shocking sometimes what some people can say, going, well, actually, the survival rate is, or it's all on the down. Actually, this is all the possibility that you have. Think bright and positive,
and often I think doctors, and this this is certainly especially at the moment with the coronavirus, and doctors are incredibly smart, intellectual people, and if that's where you want to go, then great. But it saddens me when, certainly in cancer, where a doctor has the power to say you are terminal. And terminal means I can't give you any more radiation, and I can't give you any more chemotherapy.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I had one particular lady who was going through cancer, and her doctor, she said, oh, you know, is there anything that I should do or eat? And he said, you know what I would do? I'd eat, and you know, I'd eat a nice bun every day. And you know, and the thought of her just digesting that, and I sort of said to her at the time, I said, sugar is one of, you know, if not the biggest feeder of cancer.
Yeah.
So no, please
Yeah.
don't.
No.
You know, but I didn't see her until a year, 18 months after she'd been given that advice, and she hadn't looked at her diet at all. And I'm not saying that that would have saved her life, because she did sadly pass away. But I just think there's still so much to learn, so much to blend with Western medicine.
To be curious, to offer that choice. Yeah.
Just give them choice. And like you say, empower. You know, okay, you're going to have radiotherapy, or no, you need chemotherapy. But you know what I would do is I would juice, and I would make lovely, wholesome soups, because you might not feel like a grand meal. But often when your levels hit the floor, all you want is sugary stuff. You know, you have that in everyday life. When we're stressed, people who smoke will probably smoke more, you know, during cancer treatment. They'll probably eat worse, because it's like, well, you know, I deserve it. I'm going through cancer treatment.
Yeah. It's that phrase, I deserve it. And isn't that, I'm not even sure it's a generational thing, it's a childhood thing. Oh, we've had a lovely day, or it's your birthday, we'll feed you with sugar, we'll, you know, and the whole alcohol, I've had a really stressed day. I deserve my glass of wine, because it's been really awful. I've fallen into that trap so many times. It's about shifting that mindset.
It is. And like I say, you know, I'm not, you know, I can't, I hate to sit here, and I hope it doesn't come across, and but I'm not smug. I haven't found the answer. I have just experienced personally, for me, a life which I have been lucky enough to see where I need to adjust, where I need to accept, and where I just need to be grateful. You know, there's lots of things I don't have. Yes, I would love to be, you know, a size 8, and you know, I don't know, look like Cindy Crawford or Elle McPherson or something. I mean, lovely. That would be fantastic. But it wouldn't change my journey. It would just change the outside. So that healing journey is definitely about learning more about ourselves, so that we can stand in our power, and we can go at a dinner party and go, this is who I am. This is what I am. And be okay with that. No.
Yeah. So when I first met you, I met you as a childminder.
Yes,
so you were obviously gorgeous childminder, best childminder ever. So you obviously had this in your life. You had the crystals, you had the healing. What tipped you? Because I know there was a point where you went, actually, I'm no longer going to look after my gorgeous children or other people's gorgeous children.
I felt like I was in an oversized coat, or something that was too small and wouldn't button up. So my mum very kindly gave to both me and my sister, if you like, our inheritance. She sold a property, said, okay, here's some money to you, here's some money to you. What do you want to do? And my sister bought a slightly larger house and moved areas. And I said, I am off to Devon. And my mum was like, whoa, no, that wasn't quite what I wanted you to do with the money. And I was like, well, what happens if you get ill again? So that fear thing for her. And I said, Mum, I just know that this is right. And if it's not right, I'll turn around and I'll just come back, or I'll choose somewhere else. So I arrived in Devon and thought everyone was going to love the idea of, you know, healing and crystals. You know, we've got Totnes down the road. Everyone's really open to it. What I didn't fully appreciate is that the life that I was looking for, that quality of life, which was slower, gentler, if you like, just a very different pace. People didn't necessarily need it like they needed it in that stockbroker belt that I sat in before I moved to Devon, where everybody's super stressed. And I'm not saying people in Devon are not stressed, of course. You know, life is tricky and difficult and challenging, but it was very, very different. And plus, I didn't know anybody. So whilst I was, like we were saying, so excited about sharing with everybody, everybody wasn't quite so, oh, right, because they were thinking, who is this person? This, you know, this person who's talking healing and crystals. And so I had to rethink quite quickly. Maybe I can't do that. Maybe I'll do that of an evening or at the weekends. But I was a single mum in an area I knew nobody. So it was certainly not going to be an overnight, okay, I'll get Luke looked after there and and whatever. So I worked in a primary school, loved it. I'd always worked with children all my life. My first ever job was as a nanny for a 2-day-old baby. Loved it. I've always had children in my life, you know, even when I was little and we belonged to a rugby club, I would walk all the babies around the pitch, drop the pram off, get the next buggy, walk round, do the loop again, put them back, you know, and I would literally do that for the whole rugby match. I just loved it, you know, and so that, you know, I'd stopped working at the primary school. I did a couple of other jobs purely because I had to, money and all that. And all of a sudden, I don't know what, there weren't childminders up country. There were nannies. There weren't childminders, you know. So here I was in Devon, and I spoke to more and more people and built friendships with more and more people, ended up becoming a childminder. And I'm not just saying it because I looked after your daughter. I was so lucky. I had lovely children. I had lovely families, you know, a lot of which have gone on to be my friends. And again, I know that chapter was so important for me to, you know, socialize. Certainly after, you know, having cancer, I lost a lot of years, a lot of my 30s in a very serious, scary situation, and I lost a lot of confidence. So, you know, I came to Devon at 39, and it opened up another avenue and brought me lovely friends. And that certainly, a lot of that came when I was childminding. So I had been running some meditation groups, done a bit of healing. You know, if somebody was in trouble, I'd say, why don't you come and have a treatment? And I'd set it up, you know, in my lounge, and, you know, shut all the dogs away, and, you know, held tight the cupboard doors that had all the children's, you know, toys in and everything else. And I don't know, I think it was Joe. I think that's my husband. He, I think he just said to me, do you something like, do you miss, you know, doing the healing? And I said, do you know what? I really, really, really do. And he said, but why don't you do it? And I said, well, because everybody knows me as a childminder, you know, I'd done it for so many years. And he said, well, why don't you give it a whirl? Why don't you do this? And a situation happened, personally, where, Joe and I were going to go on and adopt, and sadly that didn't happen, which devastated us. And again, a really rubbish situation, which at that time broke my heart, made a very strong line down. Childminding was an incredible, and I can't say enough about how much I loved it. It just filled me with such joy and happiness. But it just, that line came down, and it was like, this is the time for me to pick back up and return back to healing. And I'm very, very lucky, I know, but my husband was incredibly supportive. and said, go for it. Just do it. And I was like, really? And he was like, just do it. Just do it, Em. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was the first, it made me all go cold. It was also the first time that I'd had that supportive partner as well. Not that Joe hadn't been supportive before, but it was just, I'd always had to hold it together. I was a single mum. You know, I couldn't make choices for me. I had to make choices for Luke. So he was allowing for me to make choices for me. You know, it's like, here you go, do it. We might be a little bit poor. We might, you know, need to do, you know, baked beans on toast a lot. That's fine. Just go for it. And, you know, that was 3 years ago. And we've moved a few times, but now we are very settled in our house in West Charlton, just outside of Kingsbridge. And we're at the top of a hill. We've got beautiful views across countryside, but also the estuary. And I've got a little hut that sits at the bottom of our garden. And this is where I hold my healing treatments, my meditation classes, where I get to speak with you. At the moment, I'm doing sort of virtual meditation, which is really, you know, again, taught me so much. You know, connection is powerful, and you don't always have to be literally, you know, holding somebody or touching somebody or have them physically in the room. It's lovely. That is a beautiful element to it. But I'm learning that actually you can get a very strong connection, you know, over Messenger and FaceTime. And I think we're becoming more appreciative of that. You know, we've been stripped within this virus situation of contact physically, haven't we? So it's like, right, okay, we're a bit more maybe open and vulnerable to it.
Yeah. And then to learn actually that energy is not just our immediate presence, you know, and how far it can stretch, and the impact you can have is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was why I sort of said goodbye to my childminding, but I still see lots of my children, so it's lush still. I just don't have all the toys in my house. Or the whopping great car and car seats and everything else, double buggies and yeah. I must have looked like a crazy person. They were really good times. They were really good times. I think I had 4 dogs and 6 children or something in the summer. Oh my goodness.
I was always amazed how you managed to fit it in the van. My God, she gets the dogs in there, and then all the double buggies, and her car's full of car seats.
Dogs, literally, they'd have their sort of noses through a double buggy wheel. Like, well, it's fine. It's only 10 minutes down the road. They were looking at me and literally just sort of opened the door, and these sort of dogs cascaded out of the boot, and then all these children just kept coming. It was lovely.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, I did.
I loved it. I loved watching you like that, and I loved that Daisy was part of that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, she is a special one. She is. She's lush.
I'm very lucky. Do you find that with all your experience, especially with the cancer, that the people that come to you, you do connect on it? Actually, I've been there and done that. They're almost being guided to you specifically from your journey.
Yeah, I think certainly when I began and I was still up country, I would say probably 1 in 5 people who came to me were going through cancer.
So we're interrupted by a lack of Wi-Fi, but I was asking you about whether you had clients whose experience was very similar to your own, and you were saying that you did have people who were suffering from cancer.
Yeah, certainly at the beginning. When I say at the beginning, the first few years, definitely. It sounds ridiculous, but people who were suffering, in actual fact, quite a few people at the end of their life, and there was one lady in Brighton, which was probably a couple of hours from where I was living when I arrived here in Devon. The first patient, client that I saw was a gentleman who was at the end of his life. The lady I spoke about earlier, that was told to go and eat ice buns. She sadly lost her life as well. And I moved into a house, we moved into a house 3 years ago, just as I was, I literally finished childminding in the September, and we moved into this house, and literally bang slap sort of opposite, was this lovely couple, an older couple, and she suffered with the beginnings of dementia, and she had battled with cancer. And quite soon after we moved in, within the first sort of month, possibly 6 weeks, she was told that her cancer had returned and it was terminal. So I worked a lot with her. I was only in that house for 6 months, but I do believe that I was placed there for not only the friendship that I gained with both of them, but also to help her towards the end. And I was able to do that. And whilst, here I am, and I'm, every day I'm really lucky that, cancer didn't take me and end my life in a physical sense. I was very lucky because I could understand, because I knew what that fear felt, even though I didn't know what, being told you were, terminal and your life was going to be shortened. There is something very, very strong that happens. You can have lots of lovely friends and incredible family, and you can describe how you feel and how frightened you feel, and what cancer does to you and what the treatment feels like. But actually, unless you've been in that situation, as with many different situations, you can't. You really can't. So I think that definitely gave both my client and myself a very strong connection, a really sort of unique connection in the respect of just that deep understanding and empathizing. But I think since then, I think the work I've done has expanded in so many different directions. Cancer is an element, and I certainly, like I say, I have seen people, in recent years. But what I find is the most common is lots of childhood trauma and so much stress and anxiety, especially in children. And I think certainly with the work and experience I've had with children of all ages, it's an area that I would really, really, really like to discover and evolve. And I'm not sure quite in what shape or form. If we hadn't had the coronavirus, I was going to run, like, if you like, a little pilot sort of session of learning about crystals for children. Wow. So, if they suffer with, stress and worry at school, or bullying, or anything, anything which feels very real and huge for a child without the maturity of being able to work through it, maybe. Crystals hold that fantastic energy which can rebalance emotions and boost the energy system, clear and cleanse, sort of overactive thinking. I'd really like to offer that to children.
That's
Again,
so
we've talked
valuable.
about it. Yeah, I think because, like we've said many, many times during this lovely chat, is empower.
Yeah.
Empower our children, because our children then are going to become teens.
Yeah.
And, then they're going to become young adults, and then they're going to be responsible adults, all being well.
I mean, Daisy is 10 and she already has a small collection of crystals, or she has access to mine. And I do my oracle cards, various forms. And she's got quite a big life change coming up in September. And that's one of my sadnesses, because she's going to be going to boarding school, is that I won't be on hand to support her and give her that succor and do the oracle cards. So I bought her a beautiful nature spirit set, which she sat with and she draws and stuff. And especially with lockdown at the moment and not seeing her friends, and every day she'll come and say, "Mummy, this is the question I asked and this is what I got, and read the book, Mummy, it just fits." And it's like she's not even self-soothing. She's accessing another support system that won't be me. And that's not just her, it's her being able to connect with spirit and trusting. And I trust that when she asks, the support will come, whether it just be in a dream, because the first night she had this set of cards, she had these amazing dreams about all these animals, and we looked them up the next day, because they've got like penguins and peacocks and just amazing, wombats and everything. And I want to empower her to go, and I always say to her, you're not alone. You just need to ask for help. Just ask your guardian angel to stand a little bit closer if you're scared or you're worried if I'm not there and you can't ask me. And I want her to know that she has this toolkit. And so she'll have her
literally
homeopathy.
just about to say.
Yeah.
I mean, what an incredible toolkit that, she's going to have going forward in life, not just in September, and maybe at times, it might, slightly falter and then it's in her. It clearly is in her. It's a strength that she's using even now. And that's, well, amazing.
But
well done both of you, isn't it?
Thank you. For you to work with children and give them that gift on a, because you can reach so many more in that way. That's not, I love crystals and I love all that, but it's not what I do on a daily basis, unlike you. And to empower and educate and to give that tool to
education
children.
As well.
Yeah, and to trust, because actually, whilst they're young, they still have that amazing connection.
Yes.
And it's heartbreaking when they lose it and they become adults and they almost become separate. And to nurture that love, and she just doesn't question it. She doesn't question the crystals. She doesn't question the homeopathy. If I give her a balance, if I give her the cards, she's so beautifully open and receptive to it. It's a joy to see.
It is
really
a joy. It's such a shame that we lose it along the way, don't we? And we begin to overthink, and we begin, we sit in judgment or
we allow the outside world to tell us what to think.
Yeah.
And we take on board that doctrine, and we lose that power of thinking for ourselves and our connection.
Yeah. I mean, if it's any consolation, I'm sure you'd kill me by saying it, but Luke went off to uni. He's now 22. He'll be 23 in September, and he went off to uni a few years ago. And I don't know, probably in the first year, even the first few months, he rang me. He went to uni in Falmouth, so not far from us. But he walked past a crystal shop, and he was with a group of friends, and they all ended up going in. And he ended up just picking a load of crystals, different crystals, all different kinds. And he rang me and he said, "Oh, Mum, I've been into town." He did lots of other things, like, ate burgers and, sat on a bench and, whatever they were doing. But he said, "I've been and I've got these crystals and I've put them on my windowsill and they're activating, Mum. The sun's doing their bit." He was very blasé about it. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's brilliant." And he's come back to live at home until, his next chapter can begin. And all these crystals are still on his windowsill.
Yeah. So it's all there.
And I dare say he probably doesn't even look at them.
Yeah.
Or he probably, he certainly never shared that he's picked them up and done anything with them. But for him, they're there. It's the normal. It's okay. you know, his friends come and hang out in his room. They, you know, I don't even know if they probably noticed. Probably not, being 22. But he's not ashamed of it. He doesn't hide them away. He doesn't, you know, I've got angel wings all over my house. And, you know, up until recently when I'm, you know, before I moved into my hut, you know, I had my healing room actually in the house. They just don't question it. Just don't question it.
It's interesting you say that, because if so I've got Gina, who's the same age as Luke, but when Milo and Jasper, who are now 18 and 20, if I gave them, which I did, bought them very expensive bracelets with like an energy dot in for their phones, so it stopped the radiation from the phone getting to them, and I just wanted to protect them because they've got Wi-Fi at school and they're constantly on their phones. And they wouldn't wear it. And the reason they wouldn't wear it is not because they didn't believe it, it's because all their friends asked them what it was. And they couldn't.
Really?
Yeah. And they didn't want to have the judgment from their friends, which just broke my heart. Because I'd always try and empower them, going, well, you can be the one that educates them. But it's so hard being a teenager. It's hard enough without having to bring something into the world that makes them different or makes them separate.
That is such a shame. I mean, yeah, I suppose if we transport ourselves back to, you know, when we were their age, you know, is it harder for boys? I suppose, especially if you're gonna, I mean, no, it's not a piece of jewelry, but is it more obvious? I don't know. I'm really.
But it's about having to explain.
That saddens me. That
they believe it. I educate them as much as I can, but obviously I've done a lot more research. They don't have the depth of the knowledge in order to then have that voice. I mean, but interestingly, Milo was saying the other day they were having must have been a Snapchat conversation with their mates, and they were talking about 5G and Bill Gates and vaccines and stuff. And actually, a lot of them were on board, which I found really interesting. So I think that's probably changed.
Do you think it's just evolving?
Years.
You think it's changing?
Yeah, but it was interesting. Firstly, they were having that conversation at all. I found fascinating. And then I think once one person goes, actually, this is what I believe, then it gives other people the power to have a voice.
Yeah, it's such a difficult time for teenagers as well, isn't it? You know, in the respect of in the nicest possible way, they think they know everything. Yeah. I was exactly the same. I'm so in charge. No, I don't think you are. But that you don't learn that until further down the line, do you? But, you know, they think they know everything. And actually what you've got to say is ridiculously old-fashioned.
Yeah, even though I've proven to them with muscle testing the impact it has, you combine that with but I'm invincible, but I can do whatever I like. I'm not going to get hurt. Or actually, they don't want to take responsibility. They want it all to go away and stick their fingers in their ears and go. But I see both sides of it. So it's like, if you're prepared to talk about Bill Gates and 5G, put a wristband on, mate. It cost me 75 quid. Well, for two of them.
I was going to say.
I got two.
Yeah. It's, timing. Timing is everything.
Yeah.
You know, timing for different stages in our lives that we weren't listening at 1 minute, you know, at one time, but we then go on and listen. I think is really, sorry, go on.
I was going to say earlier about when you were moved and opposite that lady for 6 months, with hindsight, how you can see the timing of the universe and how, with hindsight, we can see it, but actually in the moment, like now, maybe with lockdown or coronavirus or any situation that someone's going through, trusting that actually the universe, we're in the right place at the right time. So yes, we'll probably see it 5 years down the line. Oh, that's why that business didn't work, or that's why I met that person, or that's why I got divorced. Is trusting you're in the right time and what is happening is exactly what's meant to be happening.
I think, I think that is so true of so many. If you know, when we look back on our lives, where you can see that, and I think it's quite obvious in certain relationships that, you know, certainly when you're younger and, you know, you fall in love, crush, whatever, with that boy that you really want to be with, and you know, and it doesn't happen, and then everybody's, you know, sixth form or goes to uni or whatever, but how people then come back, you know, in their early 20s, and what you didn't think you had in common or whatever it's a different relationship. You know, it's still the same people, but at that time when you started your relationship or your friendship together at that time, it didn't fit, but it, you know, it fits as you get further and further down the line, as much as to say, you know, maybe certain school friends that you had, you don't have in your life anymore, because everybody goes off in different directions. It doesn't mean that the timing for you to come back and be together again won't happen, but we don't know, and that's the beauty of the future, isn't it?
Well, I've said this in my faith podcast, it's just trusting. It's just trusting the moment, being in the right now, and knowing that whatever is happening is what's meant to be, and living in faith and trusting in the universe will bring what you need.
Yeah, at the time you need it, and and all the lessons that come with that. No, definitely. This has been so lovely.
I know. It's always a delight. I could talk to you for hours.
Well, I'm sure
I think we're going to have to plan another one. But for the moment, thank you so much for being part of this podcast and all your insights and your honesty.
Thank you so much for listening to the Hera Hotspot podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you'd like to check out our Facebook page under Hera Holistic. Next time, I'll be talking to Amy Johns, a solution-focused hypnotherapist. I'm really looking forward to hearing how she discovered and trained in this therapy and about her entrepreneurial journey so far. Until then, take care.